The Agronomist is made possible by the Soybean School, the Farm Resilience Mentorship Program, and XiteBio. Excite your crops with inputs from XiteBio Technologies, a Canadian company providing made-in-Canada inoculants and biologicals. Since 2010, they've been helping farmers harness the power of the soil. Let us help you find the best solution and access nitrogen and phosphorus with XiteBio's lineup of inoculants and ag biologicals. Reach us at 1-855-XITEBIO or at XiteBio.ca. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Agronomists. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith. I don't own a Christmas sweater, so if somebody could send me one, that'd be great. But I do have the world's tiniest Santa hat. So there you go. That and I did have terrible Christmas lights up, but I took them down because they were too distracting. But welcome to our year in review, our final episode of The Agronomist for 2025. Before we get going, shout out for our first episode. So it will be season 7, if you can believe it, of The Agronomist. Will start January 5th. We're going to be talking about the smartest spend. So be sure to mark your calendars, 8 p.m. Eastern, January 5th. We'll be back at it. So of course, we're not on the air next week. If you collect those CU credits, head on over to realagriculture.com/agronomist. Let us know you took on the show. We'll get you those CU credits. And while you're there, sign up for the newsletter. So thanks to all for believing in me, goat farmer, that I would have been wearing an ugly Christmas sweater. But sorry, I cost you $5. Okay. To review the gear, we've got a Westerner, we've got an Easterner. We hope they've got Santa hats at least. Let's bring in our guest for tonight. We've got oh my God.
Humbug.
Oh my God. Everybody, when we started this show before we went live, Pete was not wearing any of this getup. I should have known. We'll just ignore him for a minute. Mike, how are you? Welcome here. Tell everybody where you're from and what's keeping you busy. Pete, that's amazing.
I'm doing great. And yeah, Peter must have run off and grabbed a bunch of stuff. He saw my hat and thought, oh man, this guy went up me today. So I'm based out of Plenty, Saskatchewan. So that is in West Central Saskatchewan, northwest of Rosetown, northeast of Kinnersley, generally right in the middle of nowhere. And I am an agronomist and a partner with an agronomy services with M&P.
Okay. I believe, Mike, you're supposed to say you're the middle of everywhere.
Yeah. Not really. When people say... which happens very rarely when people say, "Oh, I just drove by Plenty the other day." It's like, well, why? Like, it's not on the way to anywhere. It doesn't really make sense.
Okay. No, they were just touring. It's fine. All right, and Peter Bah Humbug Johnson joins us from near, I don't even know, some London back street or something. How are you, Peter? Merry Christmas. Could you do the whole episode in character? No? Okay.
Yeah, if you want.
Actually, please don't. I really don't.
We just finished the play, and I was Scrooge, right? So I have the gloves.
Yeah,
look out, baby.
Yeah. Was this so interesting? Like, this was a big reach for you then to have to play Scrooge. That was really.
Most people would say typecast. Anyway.
Exactly. Anyway, how are you? What's keeping you busy?
I am excellent. Thank you so much. The play was keeping me quite busy this past 2 weeks, as well as all the regular stuff. Right at the end of the year, we're trying to do crop plans and buy fertilizer for the growers that haven't already done that for the clients that I consult with. Plus, I don't know, just keep up with everything that's happening out there. So it has been an incredibly hectic last month.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You still expect me to do the word, right? Like,
yes, actually, we do need, a little bit. That should be okay. Yes, I still expect a word this week, but you can have next week off. It's fine.
Thank you.
We'll let you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll let you take. We'll let you take 1 week off. Yes, we are all taking that week off. Okay, so this year, year in review. There are always, of course, big agronomy stories of the year. There's usually a surprise or two, usually a heartbreaker or two. Mike, I'll start with you. We've got some specific things we're going to go through, but we'll start with I'll ask you both, what was your biggest win agronomy wise this year? What was your biggest loss this year?
Yeah, so I would say honestly on our side, we had a lot of wins. In our area, we had very, quite poor crops in 21, 22, 23, some decent ones in 24. And this year, everything just ended up working out and lining up really well for us. So we had fantastic crops in West Central Sask. I would say as far as agronomy win goes and where I feel really kind of proud about, it's, well, not necessarily proud because we produced a really, really nice lentil crop, but we completely flooded the market. So really good for production, not so great overall for revenue because that market is in rough shape now. But we generally in our area, I mean, we started off actually fairly warm in May, and we were dry, and we never caught our first really substantial rain of any kind until June 21st. And after that, it was cool and lots of consistent moisture throughout. Really good for pulse crops. Lots of biomass, which comes with lots of risk if anybody knows lentils out there. And so really for us this year, it was being on top of our fungicide plans, making sure that we were timely before rain events hit. The vast majority of our fields received 2 passes, which isn't normal for us, but huge win, massive lentil crops. I'd never seen anything like it, so that's my big win.
Yeah, it's a good one. Let's just will these lentils have birthdays in the bins?
They
Based
might,
on prices?
yeah.
They might.
We
Yeah. Okay.
produced
Okay.
basically
That
2 crops in
happens.
one. Like for
Yeah.
within our consulting business, I mean, we averaged over 50 bushel red lentils, which is something
Wow.
we've never even been close to. Like it's absolutely a monster.
That,
And so as soon as the combines got in the
yeah.
field, and I knew it was good, but as soon as they got in and I realized what the yields were, it's just call everybody I knew, like sell what you can, right? Like this is going to be
So
unreal.
yeah. And then sit on your bins. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Pete, I joked before we went live that I was going to write down what I thought your biggest win of the year would be and put it in an envelope and then do a big reveal. But I wasn't that coordinated, so I didn't get it done. But Pete, we have a lot of course, agronomy stories for this year that we'll talk about. But what was your biggest win this year?
Oh, so the biggest win, undoubtedly, like 100% hammer down, a record wheat crop here in Ontario. We broke the 100 bushel per acre barrier, and so that's a huge win from yeah, that's the big win of the year. Corn and soybeans both stunk, so yeehaw wheat.
So that is what I would have picked, Pete. Absolutely. And I think for many, and I see Warren has joined us, very brave of him to join us here. He also sends his bah humbugs to you, Peter. But for many growers, the wheat crop was, if not their best, pretty close to. It did incredibly well, and then it was after the wheat crop came off that the wheels fell off for corn and beans for a lot of people. So thank goodness for that wheat crop. That is for darn sure. Okay, there were of course also, and we've got, Mike, I think some cool pictures we'll go to of some of the crops out your way as well. I just want to Dr. Dave has entered the chat. Peter, when your outfit says 1860, but your advice is variable rate N. I like that. I like that, Dave. Okay, very nice. Losses then, let's go. Maybe we'll touch on those. Biggest lesson or biggest loss for the year. Pete, I'll start with you on this one. What was the biggest downer this year, agronomically speaking?
So you just can't say anything but drought. And not everywhere in the province had drought, but where they had drought and it was severe, it was the worst in my career, undoubtedly. And that's going back for a number of years. So yeah, the drought, particularly east of Toronto. I mean, we had areas of severe drought west of Toronto as well, but it was much, much worse. And part of that is because they're typically shallower soils as we move east as well, so they don't handle drought as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Now, Mike, beyond overproducing lentils, what was maybe one of the biggest losses of the year on the agronomy side?
Yeah, and it's it's a good year when I have to really rack my brain and understand which are the losses. Like it was a good year because we didn't have huge insect pressure. We didn't have a ton of disease, but we did have some pockets, right? And so those would be
Yeah.
some losses, some narrow pockets where we had some sclerotinia losses, where some was sprayed, some wasn't. We're trying to be fine with our fungicide applications and our dollars spent, but at times, there's a few misses that are there as well. Not necessarily in our exact vicinity, but some farms that I talk with. We ran into some cabbage seed pod weevil issues in canola,
Mm-hmm.
especially the early seeded, early flowered within an area. We ran into some cabbage seed pod weevil, and I think honestly, I was with the levels and whatnot. I mean, we knew that we were concerned, and we were controlling this cabbage seed pod weevil, but it still did a surprising amount of damage. So I think that's one area that I'd like to look at a little bit closer would be cabbage seed pod weevil. And what's interesting again, and I'm starting to be involved in a lot of conversations that are not just out of West Central Saskatchewan, but starting to move farther north. And I'm finding that, just speaking on canola, it feels to me like there's a widening yield gap out when I get into black soil zone and gray wooded between wheat and canola, where that wheat is starting to out yield canola more than I would expect. We don't see that in West Central, but our rotation isn't very high. So it makes me think, okay, is it verticillium wilt or what's happening here, right? I think there's some hidden loss or something happening agronomically that's causing that widening yield gap. So.
Mm.
And even with
This
that
makes
widening
me,
yield gap,
yeah.
Jason Voigt still has to say, bah humbug to wheat. Like, that guy, I don't understand. These Manitoba guys,
Well,
get over it.
he's in the Red River Valley, Pete. That's how it's gonna be. I'm telling you.
The funny part about the widening yield gap is if you look at profitability, canola still wins. So I know your name is Wheat
Oh,
Pete,
Mike.
and I like growing wheat,
Oh,
but it's right now it's still not making more money than canola.
still, yeah. Hey, but at least it's moving. So that's one
Yes, it
thing.
is. Yep.
It's moving out to port and out. Yeah, canola, not as much. Okay. Now I did very early on, but I'll just reiterate for everybody who's joining us live and in the chat. If you've got, I know others have already mentioned the drought here in Ontario. Definitely the biggest story. But if you want to share your biggest win or your biggest loss this year, I did ask the farmers on the rapid fire this question last week, which was pretty great. And in fact. Jim Hale out from Lancer, Saskatchewan, he had said as well, he spent some dollars, he tried some tillage, but they actually had a crop. And when you're in that area of Saskatchewan, that isn't always a guarantee. So it's kind of amazing. Amazing to see it when it works out. So super cool. Okay, so yes, please feel free to share with that as well. On that note, Pete, you sent me a list of some of the highlights or lowlights, if you want to call them that. I do want to touch on the pest side. So we've got a cabbage seed pod weevil mentioned, but I want to touch on resistant weeds for a bit. Certainly, we have over the course of the show this year on the Agronomists, touched on this increasing problem, whether it's weed spectrum, whether it's multi-resistance. Pete, what's on your radar as far as what is perhaps new or newer on the resistance side that's giving you pause?
So certainly Palmer amaranth showing up at populations in some fields now where we know that it's here to stay. We sort of knew it was coming, and we'd found individual plants, but remember that Palmer amaranth is dioecious, so you need a male and a female, and if you only find one plant, you say, oh, we can stop it. We aren't stopping it now. We've found it in at least 2 fields where it was at a very significant population. So it's here, and we have to add that to the water hemp problem. But even without those 2 weeds, because they're not everywhere, what's really worrisome to me is how many other species are really becoming resistant to the group 14s in particular. And so group 14s have been the last bastion in some cases. Like edible beans, we could still rely on the group 14s most of the time to take out the pigweed and the ragweed escapes. And now we have ragweed that are group 14 resistant. We have pigweed, green pigweed that has been confirmed to be group 14 resistant. And so those weeds are ubiquitous, right? They're everywhere in Ontario. And if they all become group 14 resistant, it really is going to have a significant impact on everybody. Water hemp and Palmer amaranth are still isolated for the most part, but those other two weeds are everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mike, what weed resistance issue is evolving? I know there's always the big ones, but is there anyone that in this year sort of reared its ugly head?
Yeah, I mean, we're always fighting kochia in Western Canada, and it's been a large problem for us because we can do the best job that we possibly can in these fields, but with the seed dispersal mechanisms of kochia, if your neighbor has a problem, it's now yours. And so my biggest worry by far is this group 14 resistance. Echo Peter a little bit. We're definitely seeing some more of it. I know Charles Geddes with AAFC said this fall that they had identified 13 additional sites, but they did I believe a fairly large survey, and I think it's going to be quite widespread. And the problem with the group 14 resistance is it's very, very much cross resistant. So they're seeing, high levels within, different products, whether it's slaflufenicil or sulfentrazone or carfentrazone. It's pretty widespread. And so that's going to be a real problem for us because we're using a decent amount of sulfentrazone for residual action in front of cereals and peas and flax to control kochia. And if we lose that active, it's been by far our best. We've got a major problem, and the way things are looking, we will lose that. So we have to, we really have to start thinking differently. It's a big issue for us. We keep on hoping that somebody's going to come up with a new group to get us out of this one, and it's very clear that that's not going to happen. So,
it's going to take a lot more planning and a lot more creative ways of adding in timings of herbicides and or other practices, and layer, I guess, is what we're going to have to do for a lot of these. Okay. Dr. Dave's got a great question. What decisions in 2025 rewarded farmers who adjusted in season, and what decisions punished those who locked in? And he uses air quotes, which I like, Dr. Dave. Punish those who may be locked in. And this is interesting because, Mike, you're in an area that doesn't usually get water, and it got water. And Pete, we're in an area that usually gets water and didn't get water. And so both of those scenarios, of course, are BMPs sort of change, right? In that, if it does rain, you can sort of add things, but if it doesn't, it's hard to take them away if they're already down. So Pete, maybe I'll start with you. Were there instances where, being adaptable paid off, or were a lot of people sort of stuck with the decisions they made?
So, Lyndsey, I think right out the gate, and it's kind of funny because I sing this song a lot when I speak in Western Canada. If you put all your nitrogen on in the fall, you have zero opportunity to manage for the moisture that you have in the crop. And so that happened to us in corn this year for growers who put it all on up front and then ran into no moisture. And I mean, Mark Davis is in the chat, and he's sort of the poster child for that because he put on enough nitrogen for a 200 bushel crop and ended up with, I think he said like a 58 bushel average. And Mark, I'm not trying to, whatever it is, you didn't use that nitrogen. And so that's one side of it, is that growers who chose to, and the later you could push that side dress, the better, except growers who chose to short nitrogen up front on the corn crop. So they put down maybe 30 or 50 up front, and then they were going to Y drop the balance. You Y drop nitrogen on top of the ground and get no rain, and you don't have enough to carry that crop. Those growers actually hurt almost worse than the people that put it all down up front, because they got even lower yields because they shorted that crop early as well as late. And so this nitrogen game is just never easy.
Mark weighs in. It was 56.3, Pete. You were being kind at 58.
I was being kind.
So,
Yeah.
that hurts. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Mike, from your perspective, again, this is one of those games that a lot of farmers have to play out west is, will it rain? And it did. So did that catch anybody flat-footed?
Yeah, I think so, right? I think it really showed who was planning for success and who wasn't, to be perfectly honest. Again, we've been fairly dry since 2021. Last year in 2024, we had reasonable crops and good crops in some areas, but it wasn't across the board. So this year was our first, really nice crop probably for 7 or 8 years. And so one of the messages that we've had with everybody that we work with is to plan for success, right? Try to capture your residual nutrients like nitrogen that you're not using within that year. But we have to put our right foot forward. So just a pushback to Peter's comment on the top dress note here. I mean, you just summarized exactly where we run into issues is lack of moisture or reliability of moisture. That's our biggest problem with top dressing. And so, for me, I've played around with lots of different things, and I've come to the fact that we have to put down a good base supply and top dress for like excess. That's almost what we have to do. Our growing season's so narrow, and we have to make those decisions so early, unless we're going for protein in wheat, that it's been a challenge for us to get that down and make the correct decision. Now, so again, I think one of the advantages, and we do lots of variable rate work with our client base in our area, is that we have that higher resolution on remaining nitrogen within the soil. And so I feel like that allows us to be a little bit more aggressive to make sure that we do have proper amounts, but also still understand how to maximize efficiency within each of those areas. And so with that, and I guess the reason for that is because I feel like our chances of recovering the unused nutrients are that much higher because of that resolution. And so we're ready for good crops. Maybe not like the kind of crops that we had this year, because we've never had those. Like they're record crops within our area, but that there was a divide that formed between people that weren't ready and people that were, in my opinion. And again, just to talk about that fungicide a little bit, we had 8 to 10 bushel increase on lentils with our second pass fungicide this year. There was I know I've talked to farms that were very pleased because they had a 35 bushel red lentil crop and they didn't spray fungicide, and they thought that they had kind of squeaked through and they had won. And they don't realize how excellent crops were if you had a good fungicide program.
Right. Yeah. Like really left a lot on the table without really realizing it until you compared, right? Yeah. Okay. We're going to take a brief pause. We're going to go to our second read of the night, and then we'll come back. There's some really great questions and comments in the chat as well, and we'll use those to launch our conversation. But producer Jay, if you would. Our sponsors tonight are XiteBio, the Soybean School, and the Farm Resilience Mentorship Program. In the face of increasing risk from extreme weather, rising costs, and market instability, agronomist support is even more vital for sustainable production. The free Farm Learning Hub assists agronomists in identifying and implementing high resilience practices that can help their clients improve soil health and boost productivity. Check out the Farm Learning Hub today for free resources, including online courses and webinars. Certified crop advisors can also get CEU credits. Visit farmlearninghub.ca. Oh my God, Pete. I don't know how many hats you have, but we're about to find out. Okay. So we've got some great feedback in the chat. So Warren, Farmer Schnack shares, cutting back Y drop was the right decision. Now Warren was, and I will say this, and I have to apologize to Warren. Early this summer, I told him he wasn't really in a drought, and it never rained after that. And so it was a real drought, and I apologize, and it's all my fault, so I'm sorry. But he said cutting variable fungicide was as well, but variable rate seed was a winner for Warren, so that's really cool. And Jason Vogt shares that their issue in southern Manitoba, besides kochia that Mike talked about, is confirmed group 14 resistance to water hemp now just south in North Dakota. Please keep it there, North Dakota. Don't think it's gonna. Everything seems to like to move with water or birds or wind. Okay, so Mark says that on the nitrogen discussion, the PSNT called for more N. I questioned it, but was convinced by experts to pour the N to it at side dress, and so they increased their tax write-off.
So Lyndsey,
So
can
at
I
this,
just jump in?
yeah, go ahead, Peter. Of course you
Yeah, I
may.
just want to just jump in on that a little, because the
Yep.
where they did get some rain, and
Yep.
growers that actually side dressed and put it in the ground, right, knifed it
Mm-hmm.
in, versus Y drop. This year there were some trials out there where the
Yep.
left on the surface was 50 bushels per acre less yield than when we put it in the ground, got it into moisture, because we weren't getting the moisture from above,
Yep.
but on some of those silt
Yep.
loam soils and good soils that really allow water movement, if you could get it down into moisture, it moved to the crop and they still had really great yields. So
Right.
in Mark's case, it sort of comes down to knowing your soil as well. And maybe, when Mark reaches out to some weird agronomist named Wheat Pete and he makes a recommendation, Mark should back off and say, yeah, I think I know my soil's the best, and go a little bit with his gut as well, because
Mm-hmm.
his clay soils just are not going to move that nitrogen as well if he doesn't get more rainfall. And I find like it's just a fascinating kind of discussion to talk about. Anyway, I just wanted to add that
Yeah. No,
to the mix, because it matters, right?
well, it does. It does matter. And I spoke with with a farmer last week that talked about how Mike, you mentioned the fungicide decision. They were very dry, but it just so happened to, during the critical period, it was really humid and they got just a few showers, and so they still went ahead with their fungicide pass on canola, and it was well worth it. So I mean, there is that, sometimes that works in your favor, right? Is you're like, no, I'm going to do it because conditions are right. But if the conditions don't materialize, that's, I mean, you've got to make the call at some point, right? Okay, so where are we? Okay, so there's a reliable test. So Mark's got a question about a reliable test. Mark, I'm going to tell you, watch January 5th episode, because we're going to talk about that quite a bit, of the PSNT, etc. Okay, so there's also a question here, in and we touch on this sometimes, of how you don't farm, like for next year, you don't farm last year's weather, right? So, Mike, in thinking about that and thinking about maybe the lessons from 2025, and if we've got some slides you want to share, please let me know. But what lessons maybe from 2025 do carry forward to 2026, or are there some things that don't count on it being that again, like it rained?
Well, I think we've got to take lessons from every year, right? I mean, I learned a lot of lessons from 2021, and we had a horrible crop, absolutely horrid, right? I mean, there was
Yeah.
6 and 7 bushel canola, but I think we have to learn lessons from all that. I mean, for us this year, it was a really neat lesson on how efficient we can be with nutrients, and with water, because
Yep.
we didn't have the heat stress in July and the first half of August
Right.
that we always do, always, and so it's unbelievable how efficient we can actually be for every pound of nitrogen when we don't have those kinds of stresses. So we do a lot of tracking of usage year over year, and so we talk about
Yep.
reliable sources of N, and can we believe soil tests? And I would say kind of, right. That's the real answer, because I think for me it's just to understand trends year over year, and what the crop is using, what we're seeing for results within the field, those kinds of things. And this year we would be 15 or 20% more efficient than we've ever been with nitrogen, which
Mm-hmm.
is a lot of fun. And so I think, to give us that kind of up, this is like the top potential, and this is what we can do, is really neat to have. But just because of that doesn't mean we're definitely not using those numbers going into 2026. It doesn't make any sense. Like, they're too good to be true, right? So
Right.
we've got to be firm with the information that we have. Try not to dive into recency bias. Be a little bit careful with our yield targets. We don't want to spend too much, but our investment in fertility this year is significantly higher because we finally used up all that residual N that came
Right.
from 2021 and on. And so if farms aren't compensating for that in 2026 in my area, it's going to be a real problem. They're not going to have the fertility
Yep.
that they need to grow a decent crop. And just be aware of the risks, right? I mean, one of the charts that I sent you, Lyndsey, was just talking about topsoil moisture and subsoil moisture in our area, because
Yes.
we didn't catch the late rains that the south and the eastern part of Saskatchewan received. And so I think we have to be a little bit careful and understand that. And again, still plan for success, but understand what is repeatable and what we can learn from last year to move forward, and what's just a nice to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, producer Jay, can you put up? It's slide 5, I think, and this is a really good reminder of and Pete, if we had one of these for Ontario, like going into fall, some areas did get some rain and others did not. So so this is, so on our left, that's your season, and on our right is your topsoil moisture conditions going into fall. Is that correct?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. And so I mean, throughout the
How close
season,
are you
we
to
didn't
that?
have it.
Yeah, green
Yeah.
dot. Yeah. Okay.
Well,
yeah,
we're not really. We're northeast of Kinnersley, so it's
you're in
like
the
the far
yellow.
west of the
Yeah,
map.
there you go.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, we had decent rain this year, but it was more timely than anything, and it was a lack of heat. Because we've done a lot of measurements over the last number of years and understanding how much heat influences yield. And in 21 on, we have found that heat is a better indicator of final yield than actual rainfall. And I would say this year is probably the same thing, just the opposite way. And where that gets interesting within our geography is that we border the black soil zone on the north end of our area, and we're in the brown on the south end. We'll see, when we have warm temperatures during the summer, we'll see a 7-degree difference from south to north. And so the difference that has and the effect that has on yield is very, very evident. And so we didn't actually get a huge amount of rain overall. It's just when it came, as you can see on the right as well. And so we just have to be aware of that. We had excellent rooting. We utilized a lot of moisture to grow that crop. And so we're going into this year, and hopefully we'll catch some snow and some decent rainfall throughout the season.
Jason adds, can't generalize in environmental conditions. They vary so much by region or by mile, which agreed. Have to look at each farm specifically. Didn't spray fungicide on canola by Starbuck and got over 60 bushel per acre yields. Starbuck is just God's country, Jason. That's all there is to it. The smoked also helped. Now, yes, we've had a few people that did talk about smoke this year, definitely keeping maybe the temp down or the evapotranspiration down a little bit, which helped. Pete, I want to go to you on this one. That recency bias does seem to get us. We sort of have the opposite problem, is that, the average is that it does rain in Ontario. What lessons from this year do you think should carry through to 2026? Which ones can we maybe just put down to experience?
Yep. And so, Lyndsey, I just want to start with what Mike talked about with his nitrogen efficiency, because it is always astounding when you get good growthy conditions, when you get the moisture and you get the right heat, the soil bugs work. And the soil bugs work, and you get amazing nitrogen efficiency, because there's, theoretically, some of the math would say it's 1,000 pounds of nitrogen in 1% organic matter. I think that's maybe a little bit hopeful, but I mean, if the bugs can just give you that extra 20 or 30 pounds out of your organic matter, then it looks like you got this really great nitrogen efficiency, but in actual fact, your nitrogen use efficiency probably is exactly the same. You just got more out of the soil because you had those perfect conditions. And when you ask me, what can we take forward to 2026? I really think that, well, a couple of things. Number one, on corn, you have to have enough up front. And we knew that before. So if you are not, like, one way or another, the work done out of Nebraska would clearly show we need 100 pounds of nitrogen on up front on corn. And growers that shorted that this year and didn't side dress in a fashion that got it into that soil moisture, it cost them big time. But most of the time, if you if you don't hit that 50 parts per million of nitrate nitrogen in a 6x6 inch, so 6-inch wide by 6 inches deep, right around the corn seed, you need 50 parts per million at the 6-leaf stage. So it's kind of 6x6x6, right? And you need that 50 parts per million. And Emerson Nafziger, like if you don't have that, you're giving up yield. And if you don't get 100 pounds of nitrogen on up front or close to it, it just often hurts you in the long run. So I think that's one of the things we can take forward. I see in the chat, Jason mentioned that he didn't put it on the fungicide on canola. That's such a struggle because, man, we sprayed for tar spot because it's just too hard to predict. And what's interesting is that the Tar Spotter app was saying that the tar spot was still a moderate risk. And it was saying that the gibberella was at very low risk. And of course, it just kept staying dry. And we had virtually no tar spot yield loss anywhere this year. I can't say quite because I'm sure that Dave Hooker or Albert Tenuta will say, "Oh, Peter, we had this one," but for the most part,
yeah.
But for the most part, tar spot was a non-issue. And meanwhile, we have hot spots where we have levels of mycotoxin in the grain, levels of DON in the grain, and the hogs aren't eating that corn. And you just go, wow, how do we apply that science and make the best decision? So fungicides on soybeans, different story. We had lots of growers who did not spray a fungicide on soybeans this year because it was just too dry, and 100% the right decision. Like very, very poor response this year on fungicide on soys.
Mm-hmm. Okay. On that question, Jay, can you go to slide 4? Mike, tell me the story of this field. What's going on
so this
here?
was really interesting. So on the left is the green crop. That's lentils. If anybody has not seen lentils, that is a very, very nice stand of lentils. But the problem is when it's that big and that filled in and that dense of a canopy, is molds can be a real problem. So that's why we were as aggressive as we were with our fungicide this year, is more the canopy growth and closure than anything. We're not big fungicide pushers. Like I want to be able to justify every dollar spent with our customers. And so last year in 2024, our lentil crops weren't great. We had too much moisture early. If you can get lentils established and get a root system, it can handle a lot more moisture. We've been really selective with our rotations with pulses because Aphanomyces has been such a problem. So this year we didn't really get our first nice rain until June 21st. They're already fairly established. After that, it was cool. So we had lots and lots of biomass. So we would have sprayed 90% of our lentils twice. And the year before, I don't think there was a good number of lentils we didn't even spray once. So it did give you an indication. So the picture on the right was a second pass where the customer left an untreated check that you can see is the brown area. And I thought this picture is really great because he was cleaning out his booms. And so the way that it cleans it out is it turns on a section, turns on another section, on and off all the way through.
I was wondering, how did you get that? How did you get a checkerboard? Like if you planned it, you couldn't do it that well.
That's how the machines go when they're cleaning out the booms.
Check blocks in the field. Come on, those are trials. Those are trials.
Yeah, they're trials. Absolutely. So that's wild.
It's taken a long time. But every time we spray, we want guys to leave a check every single time. It's still it's unbelievably hard to get a farmer to skip a pass or two passes with the sprayer. But we're starting to get through.
Especially when they're like 120-foot booms, Mike. That's a lot of ground. If you've got a big sprayer, but still.
But there's nothing worse than getting through the year and being like, did this investment in our crop pay? And you don't know. There's nothing worse than that. I hate that.
Yeah. And so this picture is fascinating. Like it's visually stunning. What were the differences though? Like between did you take this all the way and sort of analyze this yet or not yet?
Yeah, we've done some of it. I haven't actually looked at this specific field, but I do know that we were estimating at the time at harvest time, and we've got to really dive into it, around 8 bushel difference between So I think that lentil crop ended up yielding 52 this year. So
Wow.
we had as high as 68 bushel lentils this year. Like, it was honestly amazing. So
Yeah. Ray Domingo says lentils. They make him think of baby caraganas. That's right. Well,
yeah,
isn't
they're
caragana in
easier to
the
throw through the
they're in the
combine than
pulse family?
Turcanas. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Caraganas attack you. The Siberian peas, that's what they're called.
Yeah.
I can hear them popping now. Anyway, everybody loves shelter belts. And Pete's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Anyway, so there you go. Jason also shares, oh man, so in regard to the fungicide call, between that and fungicide on oats, I had many, many sleepless nights. It is one of the toughest calls to make. Especially in a dry year, right? In a wet year, it just, you're like, okay, we can justify this. But when it's dry or just on the cusp, it is really hard. I have one question. Mike, you mentioned off the top the verticillium. Certainly hearing from many growers and many agronomists across Western Canada that feels like maybe this is a disease that's around more than we thought or has been around longer than we thought. Now you're pretty far west in Saskatchewan. Are you seeing evidence of it, or do you think it's around, or where does that sit where you are?
It's definitely around. We never had visual symptoms or sightings of it until 2024 because we had been so dry the years before that. So it really hadn't creeped up in our area too much, but we did see it in 2024 where we had lots of moisture early and it dried out late. So
Yeah.
we had significantly increased instances of verticillium and as well as blackleg. So of course this year, we tried to dive in a little bit closer to those diseases, but we were dry early and wetter late, and honestly really saw very little of either. So the conditions definitely matter. And I can't really put all of the blame though for that widening yield gap I was telling you on verticillium, but it does seem to be a thing. So within West Central Saskatchewan, what I see year over year over time on basically every farm is that hard red wheat yields will end up being around 30% higher than canola. So it could happen any given year. There could be a widening of that number or a narrowing, just depending on moisture conditions and timing and seeding dates and those types of things. But over the long term, it seems that is a pretty commonplace number within our area. And I'm seeing some areas with heavier canola rotations where they're now sitting at 40 to 50% higher yield with wheat than canola. But again, canola is still making more money. That's the crazy part.
Yeah.
So if we can try to pull some more yield out of this canola in some of those areas, it's lagging, and that's a concern. When
But
us
still,
out of West
yeah.
Central have the highest canola yields in the entire province, we've got a problem.
Something's going on. Yeah, absolutely. Now, Pete, one of the actually, you know what? Wait, pause, hold it there. I just realized what time it is. This hour is flying, everybody. Okay, producer Jay, we have to go to our last read of the night, but then I want to switch gears a little because we need to talk about a corn crop that did not dry down. Because we have to talk about that. We have to at least mention it. So, producer Jay, if you would, let's go to our last read of the night. The Agronomist is made possible by the Farm Resilience Mentorship Program, XiteBio, and the Soybean School. The Soybean School on Real Agriculture is an agronomy and issues video series that allows soybean growers to learn on their own time, at their own pace, in order to become better growers in the long term. The Soybean School is made possible by support from Maizex Seeds and Lalaman Plant Care. Learn more at soybeanschool.com. Jason's got a great suggestion for you. Oh, here we go. Act 3, everyone. Oh, even the shirt changed. You are far more talented than I am. And I feel like you have a lot of clothes that just have Velcro in the back and you just change one to the other, like you're Taylor Swift on the Eras tour. Okay. Jason's solution for you, Mike, is grow more corn and less wheat. They do have some pretty short season corn, Mike. I'm just saying. But
short season is one thing, and I'm not worried too much about
water.
the seasons. I'm worried about the water.
It's the water.
If we've got good water going into the winter, then I feel a lot better about growing corn. If we don't, it's trouble. We just need so much water to get it established.
Yeah, it's too bad. Okay, Pete, we talked about this at length many times, and I'm gonna put it out there. Thank you everyone for watching the show, for staying on top of agronomy. Thank you for listening to Agronomic Monday on RealAg Radio, and thank you for listening to the Word. Because I will tell you that if you did all those things this past fall, you would have had 10 different things to ponder as to why this corn crop didn't dry down. But I still had people, Pete, like a few weeks ago, being like, I don't know what's going on, but my corn doesn't seem to be drying. And I wanted to bash my head against the wall because I feel like we covered it so many times in so many ways, that you should know what's going on with the corn crop. But we don't maybe know entirely. But Pete, what's our best guess on what happened with this corn crop, and it not drying down this fall?
Yeah, so Lyndsey, it's a really great question, and we don't know 100%. What's really interesting is that when I go north, there's still 10 to 20% of the wheat crop out, or pardon me, the corn crop out, unharvested, and that corn is still over 30%. Some of it at 34% moisture on the, I don't know what it was, the 3rd of December or the 10th of December, they tried combining it, and you just go, man. So a few things. Part of it is equilibrium moisture content. So you just have to know that as it gets colder, the corn doesn't dry down as fast. When the temperatures are warm and you have low relative humidity, it's why growers turn the fans on in the bin when it's in the heat of the day and the humidity drops, and you turn the fan on then, because that's when you get the most drying potential. So part of it is that we're just in that time of year where things don't happen much. But why didn't it dry down earlier? Well, part of it was that we did not get the heat unit accumulation that we expected, and that was partly because of cold nights. And I mean, that work that Ty's Tolinar did, and we need somebody to repeat that work because we have new hybrids that are more stress tolerant. But it really looked like when it dropped below 4 Celsius at night, the corn just lost the next 3 days. It said, nope, not doing anything. Have a nice day. And so we thought it should be black layered, and it wasn't black layered. And if it's not black layered, then it's not drying down. Another thing that happened was when it's not moving forward, it's not pushing photosynthate into the kernel that pushes the moisture out. And so we weren't getting that translocation. We also think that maybe the starch granules didn't get quite as close together, so the moisture migration was a bit slower, like we're having a lot more rebound in the bin. So we sort of think that's part of what's going on there. And pericarp thickness is another thing that you just kind of go, yeah, if it's a waxier pericarp. And a lot of growers have said that, you know, this year 28% moisture corn dried like it was 40% moisture corn another year. It just took propane or natural gas, and that suggests that pericarp was actually a bit thicker than normal. So lots of things I think that add up. Was it one thing? No, it wasn't. Was it a bunch of those? I think that's the answer. And Lyndsey, just before we move on, just as a note, verticillium in canola has been confirmed in winter canola in Ontario.
Oh.
And so that is a real kind of, don't like that.
No.
Not sure it's going to be a big deal yet, but we'd rather not have it.
Yeah, and so we'll apologize to Jeanette because she's already very upset by verticillium. Jeanette, I'll be calling you to do an episode on it. Also, I want to note that my vote for the Pantone color of 2027, because 2026 has already been chosen, will be pericarp. It's probably like a deep yellow. It'll be beautiful. Anyway, that's what we're going with. Okay, this year is it's basically white. It's the color of my sheep, in between the burrs, of course. Okay, so for our last 10 minutes, I want to, of course, yes, think of this year, but also look forward. And we had a couple questions about sort of what we think the next year will hold. But Mike, and I want to maybe actually, Jay, can you put up slide 1? It was a big year. Mike, you mentioned it off the top under a new name and the whole, but this was your first full season with the MMP name.
For sure.
So do you want to share maybe just quickly how has that transition been for you and your team? How's it gone?
I'll say interesting, which is probably not the answer you're looking for, but it's been very interesting because we didn't just start a new service line within M&P, a fairly large consulting firm. We joined 6 independent businesses together at the same time. And so like trying to amalgamate all of that information and what everybody is doing into one, and to be able to leverage and share that within the group is interesting, right? And it's a good amount of work, but we're making progress. I'm feeling really good about that. I think the relationships internally are excellent. I think our fit within the firm is definitely there. I think there's a lot of opportunity to add value, and so I'm really excited for the future. And that was the idea with the first year, is like get through it and be better because of it, and do better for year 2, and have that momentum and goals for the future, and that's where we're at.
Okay, I like it. Pete, speaking of goals, you did this wheat crop this year hit 100 bushels. So, 2026, 105. Maybe we'll just bump it. We'll go by 5s, treat it like a corn crop. But really, though, when looking forward to 2026, how did the wheat crop look going in to this winter? We are in full winter here in the Ottawa Valley, so I'm just assuming all of Ontario is. But yeah, how did it look going in? How hopeful are you for 2026?
So most of the wheat crop looked absolutely outstanding going into the winter. Some of it almost too good. The winter canola crop, for the most part, was the same. The winter barley crop, all of the winter crops, mostly, and part of it was dry weather. As long as you got that canola seed into moisture in that first week of September when we seeded it, and not everybody did. So there are some variable stands where we didn't get moisture soon enough. But for the most part, everything looks great. What I will say, Mark Davis is on, and he broadcast wheat into standing soybeans and got no rain. And you go, oh, this is bad. And he just sent a picture of wheat in the group chat, the Yen group chat, and his wheat looks awesome. And you're just going, wow, how does that work, right? Like, man, Mark, you definitely have a rainbow that ends at your location, because that wouldn't work for me. But on the other hand, Lyndsey, I also today got my first text about how long can wheat survive under standing water with ice on the surface, and we have not generally had lakes in December. So this is the earliest that we've seen that a big early snow, then a quick melt, a little bit of rain, and then it froze. Yep. And so it looked great. Will it look great in the 1st of April? That is anybody's guess.
So what's
we
your
have to kill
answer
it several
to the
times.
What's your answer to the ice question? Because we used to grow a decent amount of winter wheat when I lived in the Peace Country, and that's when we run into issue is thaw freeze cycles, and you'd have water on the surface and freeze, and that's when we get our winter kill problems. So what's your answer for that?
So I'm going to be a good agronomist here, because the answer is it depends. And it depends on, is there air under, we often kill the wheat at the bathtub ring. So if you have a lake in your field where the ice is solid to the ground, there's no chance for oxygen to get to the wheat crop. And so it will suffocate in 10 to 14 days most of the time. Where the water is, if that water gets away and we have a few air holes poked through. In fact, we've had growers that would drive over the ice with their four-wheeler once the water was gone underneath, just to crack it enough. And if you can get some air exchange, that wheat will often be fine. But if, Mike, if you're telling me that ice froze right on the ground, that's very hard on wheat, 100%.
Yep. So the deeper the depression, the better.
Except for the bathtub break, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And what is it, Pete? It's not actually winter kill. It's like late winter, early spring kill, right? In that And this is when we can get ponding, and that freezing and that ponding is usually on the back half of the winter, not the front half, right? So
exactly.
that's where we
It's
run into
mostly
issues.
spring kill. It's not winter kill.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Mostly. Yeah. Okay. Mark, I would have said unicorn tears, but Mark says our broadcast wheat germinated on unicorn urine this year. I would have said tears, but urine works too. So that's excellent. Who knew? Crops will always surprise us, I guess. Okay, now just quickly, I want to touch on a few of on the pest side. So Mike, you mentioned struggling a bit with cabbage seed pod weevil, maybe on the move. Aphanomyces, of course, loves wet conditions, so that might be an issue. What other disease, weeds, or insects are maybe an increasing concern for you for 2026?
Well, going into 2026, I think we managed to get through our grasshopper problem because that was a big issue in 23 and
That was
24.
big.
This year was quite good. So I'm feeling hopeful that we're still on the downward slide on that. So we'll see what happens there. In our southern areas, wheat stem sawfly is a going concern. So we'll be doing some variety trials with that, with some newer solid stem varieties. Cabbage seed pod weevil, I think, would potentially be a concern. It will depend on conditions and early seeded canola, because we definitely found that it was very early seeded canola that had the issue. The weevils are very much attracted to that flowering, and as soon as other crops caught up, it diluted that population so much more. Right. It was night and day. So that's really interesting and something to be aware of if seeding your canola earlier than the area. This year there was some pockets of birth of armyworms, but not as widespread. We're also maybe seeing some slow increases now in wheat midge populations in the area. So that's something we're going to keep our eye on. Really haven't had an issue with wheat midge probably since 2010, 2011. Okay. So it's been a long time. So we are kind of due. And the environment has changed significantly since then. We with the insecticides we used to use in 2010 and 2011, those aren't options anymore. And so we also have more varietal blend wheat varieties, which with midge tolerance. So that will be interesting if we see those levels increase.
Mm-hmm. Pete, are you shuddering at the wheat midge? Anything that attacks wheat, it hurts Pete. So switching gears though from the Ontario perspective, I know you mentioned soybean cyst nematode maybe on that list of things to watch for of resistance. We had our show just recently about the corn rootworm issues that are out there. We've mentioned the weeds, but diseases, insects, and weeds that are of growing concern for you, Pete, for 2026.
Yes, and so Lyndsey, for sure, you mentioned a bunch of them. Corn rootworm, resistant rootworm is a huge issue, and it really worries me that the easy answer is rotation, and yet dairy farmers, hog farmers that need feed, we can't get them to rotate. And this was a disaster year for corn rootworm, and they're going to grow corn again next year. And so you just go, wow. I think cycle. I think that's why your wheat midge probably, Mike, is maybe on the rise. Things do cycle. Maybe next year the corn rootworm numbers will crash. I hope that's the case, but I wouldn't want to bet on it. So yeah, rootworm is one. Soybean cyst, which you mentioned, is resistant. The Peking, the PI88788. The Peking in particular has been breaking down really fast, and it was supposed to be the gold standard that would last the longest, and that's not the case. And so we are seeing resistant varieties that are really getting hammered by soybean cyst nematode. There is a new product coming from Syngenta that's probably a year away, and so you say, well, maybe there's some help on the horizon, but it's a big problem. And leaf beetle. So cereal leaf beetle in wheat has become a bigger problem because our parasitic wasps that we have counted on for, I don't know, 20, 25 years, something like that, they've disappeared. And so all of a sudden, we had hot spots on sandier soils because the parasitic wasps couldn't survive on sandier soils. Were our hot spots, we knew them, but it's becoming a much bigger problem and some significant impact on some spring cereals this year.
Okay. That,
what would you attribute that lowering the population of those parasitic wasps to, Pete?
Yeah.
We simply don't know, Mike. Like, the entomologists do not understand what happened to it, where it disappeared. There is another one that they've found that hopefully will replace it, but we've been finding them at concerning levels, a much wider geography than what we had previously. It's a big deal.
And is that one of the ones that you could release? Is that one of the ones that we can actually like add to the environment? Because there are some that we can.
That's what they did with the original one. This new one that they found, I'm not sure that they've sorted out if they can rear it and release it, or whether it's just going to build on its own and we're going to see that cycling thing happen. But yeah, from an insect perspective, those are kind of jump out at me. There's always a bunch of other ones, right? But those are the ones that kind of make it go,
Well, and also, as I wrote down notes, we pretty much filled the next 3 months of the Agronomists. So, yeah, I just basically that was really what I was asking, was like, what should I be covering on the show? And then I've just been writing down all your answers. Anyway, I mean, I joke, but not really, in that this is a show of the people. So, this is how we come up with ideas. Pete always helps me out making a list, checking it twice, if you will. And so if you've got ideas, if there's a particular agronomy issue or problem that you're grappling with and you'd love to see a show on it, please zip me a note, lsmith@realagriculture.com, or find me across social media. Just don't call me. And yeah, I'd love to know. It's always great to get also volunteer your very smart friends to be on the show. I love meeting new people, new agronomists, or names that I've only ever heard, but I don't know them personally. If you really admire someone's work and what they do, would love to connect with them and have them on the show as well. And they too can wear ridiculous hats on a live stream. I mean, what else do you need, right? So yeah, so that does it for this season, for this year. This is Series 6, Season 6 of the Agronomists. We start back January 5th, 2026. If you can believe it. I'm having a hard time with that one. But there you go. So Mike, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you for being on the show and for sharing your images and your insight. Really appreciate it. Maybe we'll even cross paths one of these days. I think I might be in Saskatchewan next year.
Possibly.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Possibly. Every once in a while.
You Thanks for having me.
Yeah. There you go. All right. And Pete, I don't know what I'll see you next, but I'll be sure to turn the other way. Just
yeah. We checked the list twice because Pete is always naughty and Lyndsey is always nice.
Yes, it's true. Thank you for recognizing that, Pete. It's true. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you both. Huge thank you to everyone in the comments. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for your questions. And we will see you in the new year, January 5th, 8 p.m. Eastern. Cheers, everybody. Have a very Merry Christmas and enjoy the holidays. See you.
Happy holidays.